Hello, thank you for joining me again today. Welcome to the studio. I have in mind a small tutorial, something just to whet your taste buds. We're going to have a little play with some cling film. So for our foreign visitors, that's either Sharon wrap or kitchen wrap, food wrap. And I want to create some interesting effects with it. Shall we see what we can do? Come and join me. Here we go. What kind of effects can we achieve with cling film? Well, I'm looking at this kind of thing here. Bluebell woods, some silver birch trees, but it's the background that we're looking at. We're looking at the effect of the leaves in the trees and the undergrowth down here, and how do we get these vertical lines that look like tree trunks. Very easy, very easy. I'm going to show you. Here's another, this picture of a woodland. So the shrubbery down the bottom here, the vertical patterns of the tree trunks, and again the leaves at the top. And then we can just put a little deer in here, a stag. Now all of this started because I put up a picture of my nature journal and I'd created this, just wings, looking at the patterns and the pictures that I could see within the actual effect that I'd created. Let me bring you in a little closer so that we can have a look more closely at the wing shapes that we can see in this picture. Everywhere you look, there's wings. I can see them here, look. And more in here. And this is just created by the cling film as we use it with the paint. So here, all these little shapes, and all I've done is I've used a pen and I've outlined some of the shapes, and in some instances I've filled them in, used a little bit of gold. I could actually see the body of the dragonfly along through here, and then I've coloured and used the gold here. But even here, look, it's so pretty. I just love the effect. And so I thought that we'd have a little play with it, and I'll show you how I do it. Let's put that away. Now I'm using just a normal, any sort of paper will do. You don't need to fuss over it. This is Clingfilm and it's £140, so nothing terribly special. And I'm just using some cheap cling film, some wrap here. And I have to say to you, I have discovered that the cheaper the cling film that you use, the better it works, because it's thinner and it gives you more of an effect. The paints I'm using, it's just a palette that I've had on the side that I'd used for something else. So if you're experimenting with anything, in the first instance, just use up what you have. Don't go making a fuss and using special paints. Just take a palette that you've used for something else, and I've used this little water spritz spray to come in there and just to enliven them again, to give them a bit of oomph. These are tube paints, and I use those primarily because it's cheaper for me, because I use so much paint that a little pan wouldn't last me 10 minutes, whereas this will keep me going for a while. Now, what do? The first thing we've got to do is choose a nice decent sized brush. This is called a hake, and a hake brush is usually goat hair. And it gives you a lovely soft finish and doesn't leave marks on the paper, but you can spread an awful lot of water and paint around with it. And the first thing I want to do is wet my paper. Why am I doing this? Well, because when we do anything special effects wise like this, we've got to bear in mind that we have to put the cling film on when the paint is still in suspension on the paper. So if I were to paint the paint on immediately first, the paper would just say yippee and soak it all up and drink it all up. It's in the paper and I can't get it out and I can't make effects with it. So if I wet that first, now it's shiny wet all over, and I look at it and I can see that there's nothing there that's matte, which means I haven't covered it. And so the paper's drinking that and it's not guzzling my paint. Now down the bottom, let's just imagine we have maybe a little path in there somewhere. See, it's all wet and it's all gloopy and moving about. And then I want to introduce some greenery either side. Now you're not painting, don't imagine for 1 minute that you've got control over this painting, because basically you're thinking about the cling film doing the work for you. So this is my woodland, and I'm using a mixture here of hookers green. There's the hookers going in now, that dark green, and the pale green is sap green. And the reason I'm using the two is because I want it a little bit dark around the edges, and in fact I like it so much darker that I'm going in now with a little bit of Prussian blue, and I'm just dropping that in, and that gives me darkness round the edges to kind of frame my picture. That can go in the water for a minute, and the first thing I'm going to do is take some of my wrap and then we're going to just scrunch it. So in this instance I want to do this. So you can already see the patterns appearing in the cling film. Don't really want anything on that path. You can lift it up and move it around again if you want to, so as long as it's still soaking wet, you can do that. What I would like to do is just get that puddle out of the front here. I'm going to just dry my brush, come in with a thirsty brush and get rid of that particular puddle on the path. Don't want that. And then another piece of cling film, and I'm going to put this on the other side. So this is going to go over here. Screw it up, scrunch it around, make patterns with it. Press it in, move it about. There we are. So that's our first layer. And when we're happy with that and we feel that we've got enough patterns going on, we can move up to this area here. Now this is going to be my tree trunks. So this time I'm going to go into browns. So this is a bit of burnt umber. Bringing it down to the green. And I also fancy, I'm going in for a little bit of something a bit lighter. So this is raw sienna. Put some of that in there as well. Like this. I'd like that to be a little bit paler in the middle, so let's lift a little bit out, because that's going to be our focal point coming in, and a bit more of the burnt umber up here, a bit more water, because we're starting to dry out a bit and we need that wet, we need it. Now that's all sort of monochromatic, so what we'll do is we'll take some of the green and we'll drop some green in there as well, to make it look as though there might be lower branches of greenery through. Makes it look a bit more interesting. And I'd like to give a hint maybe of a little bit of blue sky. So if I come up here and I lift in a little bit of, this is French ultramarine. Keep it clean, don't mix it too far into the browns, because otherwise it'll go mucky on you. We mix too many colours together and of course they all turn into boring old brown. So I'm going to take some more cling film now, and I think I'll tear this. Sometimes it tears easy, sometimes it doesn't, so you've just got to be aware of that. And I'm going to put it down and then I'm going to pull it longwise. Like that. Because I want to give the impression of all these trees, and they're all vertical. So if I come through here, move it about, squidge it around. This is why your paint's got to be wet, because if it's not wet, it won't work. Like that. I need another bit now, so this is this. I'm going to put this on here, put it on, and then pull it. And you can already see that you're getting the shapes of tree trunks moving through this area. There we are. Pat it down so that the paint is squidged in between. And that should give us an area of trees. So I'm just going to pull that down a little bit here so that I can come in with my final area of green through the top. But we can already see that we've got exactly what we want here. We're starting to get a pattern going on, and that's what I'm after. I think those a little bit closer like that. A few more. If you're not happy, you can lift the whole thing off as long as it's soaking wet and just lay it down again. Now up the top we're already drying. It's a warm sunny day, so I'm going to come in there and just wet that again. So here we go, back to, this is the sap green. So we'll drop some of that in, and then we're going to drop in some of our hooker's green, like this. Bring it down to the blue, let it seep underneath, quite happy for it to do that, because we don't want a white bit, do we? So I'm just bringing that down through there. And then in the same way that I did down the bottom area, I want to come in with a little bit of this really dark, oh I love this colour, you know, this is Prussian blue, and it's one of my favourites. You put it on the paper, look, and it just explodes. Love the way it does that. I call it a rusher because it just rushes. It's actually flocculation, the way it just goes whoosh. Oh, I love it. So that gives me some lights and darks in the canopies of the trees. And then if I come back and I have some more cling film, which is stuck like Billy-O to the tube at the moment, come out. And then this again, let me tear it because it's too much, don't need that. And I'm going to scrunch it up so that I've got creases in it. And then I'm going to put it on. And that will give me even more movement at the top. So press it down well. Again, scrunch it up. Come in and lay it on like this. And those shapes should give us the movement in the canopy above. Sticking my fingers in it. Goodness sake, be careful, woman. There you go, look. Aha! Oh, don't you love it when a plan comes together? Now all we've got to do now is sit back and wait and see what that does. Whilst you're with me, there is something else that we can do with this particular technique, which is really quite exciting. And it's just like all the other techniques that we've used so far. You find things within it. Now, what happens if we work this way and we make our striations in our cling film this horizontal rather than vertical? Where does that leave us? Well, let me show you. Going to wet the paper again, and this time I want to come in with this blue. This is cerulean blue. I'm not going too dark with this because I want to give the impression of water. We're going to try to give the impression of water. So that's cerulean blue. This is French ultramarine, so we're going to bring some of that in there as well. I don't want to make it too dark, because we'll lose the ability to paint on top and to come in and work it. And then a teeny bit of green, this is sap green, just to give the impression of maybe a bit of pondweed. I love the way these two colours mix together, and it makes this gorgeous, gorgeous sort of bluey green. A bit more, too much, so I've just wiped that on my cloth. And then I'm going to come through and pull that around and bully it a bit. And then what we're going to do with this one, I want to get my wrap and I want to tear myself some pieces off because that gives me the ability to move things around. And this time I'm going to stretch it. Let me get rid of that because it'll be in my way. I want to stretch it this way before it goes on. So this time definite lines in this direction. So this piece here, and again stretch it across. So as we did with the trees, and we had vertical trees, this time we're going horizontally because I want to give the impression of water. And again, we have to sit down and be patient bunnies, and we have to wait until that's dry. How do we know it's dry? I'll show you in a moment. Well, here we are. I think we're just about cooked. I wanted to show you how to look for that point when the cling film has done its job. And I think the best way to do that is to bring you in so that you're close and uptight and personal and you can see what I'm seeing here. We're looking for this granular finish in the paint here, the way that it's settled. This is the pigment in the paint that has settled on the paper because it's a lumpy bumpy paper, it's rough. So we call that not hard pressed. And you can see there that you've got this granular effect. And when that happens, you know that you can take your cling film off. Let's see what we've got, shall we? So slowly, making sure, yes, it is dry. So now look at this fantastic effect that we've got here. So that's the greenery below. And then we have the tree trunks. Fabulous, look at that. And because we used a lot of water in the middle, we have that light effect. And then the branches and the greenery up above. Let me bring you a little closer. And you can see the effects that we have. I think you can also understand why I've gone mad in previous pictures with the idea of wings, because everywhere I look I can see wings. I can just see wings. And I think that it's a beautiful thing. Looking at this, look at that. Can you not see the wing there? Look at this. And it just happens naturally. It's just the way the cling film falls. But it's just lovely, isn't it? I just love it. So that's our first piece. And looking at that, that's worked very well. Very happy with that. I'd dry that now so that it's nice and flat, and then I would go in and work into it. I mean, it's cockled purely and simply because we use so much water, but a hairdryer on that will flatten it right down again and it will stay where it is because we've taped it down. Let's have a look at the other piece now. This was our water. How is this going to look? So we take this off now. Oh yes, look at that. So you've got to admit that is an extremely easy way to paint water. And because we've painted it so lightly, we could now come in and we could introduce some lily pads on here and some bulrushes, actually paint some fish under the water if you wanted to. But if you have a little stream in your picture and you don't know how to paint your stream, this is how I would go about it. Simple and easy. I've used a hairdryer on that, so now the paper's nice and flat, and that means that I can go back in and I can work it if I want to. And I just wanted to show you one last technique that I would use on this to maybe enhance it somewhat. Using either, I'm going to use a paintbrush here, but you can use a pencil, coloured pencils, and go in and work this a little more. But a damp brush, so just damp. And if I come into some of my trees, here for instance, and I'm just going to disturb the paint. All I'm doing is dampening the paint that's there. And if I do that, it smooths it down and then that becomes more definitively a tree trunk. Let me do another, and I'm going to bring you in a little tighter so that you can see what I'm playing at. You can see where I've just darkened this down. So if I was going to come into this tree here, damp brush, and just move the paint and nudge it and budge it and smudge it so that you have that darker edge to the tree. And it just defines them against the background. This one here maybe too wet. Come in, get hold of the paint, and just pull it up into the canopy like that. But I don't want to lose the defining lines that I have from my cling film, because that will just negate everything that we've done and make it pointless. So here, dark, up and through like this. And suddenly we have a tree coming out and looking at us, don't we? But I've still got those white lines from the cling film, and that's just what I want to do with that. And I might just get hold of that. So there's nothing there, just the paint that's there. So what I'm going to do, so there's nothing here, just the paint that's already in that area. So with a damp brush, if I come up and through, I can drag the paint and I can make the lines like that. And that gives me a little bit more creativity, just there like that. And the rest of it is up to you and your imagination. So to be honest with you, you could do what you wanted to with this. We could flick here and we could make it look as though it's gravelly. So all I'd use for that is something like this. This is, use it for cakes and for scooping out bowls, but you can use it for flicking. So we could flick through there and turn that into a path. I notice, interestingly enough, that the way that the cling film has worked along here almost looks as though I have the edging of a path there. Can you see that? That's fascinating. We didn't mean it to be there. So that would be quite interesting if I looked into this and created a story out of that. Between the trees, I could just create the edges of a house through here, so it could be Grandma's house in the woods, and maybe this is the path to go. I could carry the path on through there. So for instance, if I get rid of that, I'm just going to lift it. This is a cruel way to treat a brush, you know. Just lift it, and that would continue the path maybe through that area there. And that could be the way to Grandma's house, which is just peeking out in the woods through here behind the trees. I'd like to use a long thin brush to create long tall grasses in here to give that a bit of movement, and maybe there'd be a little unicorn's head poking out somewhere through here, a cat sitting on the path. The story now is yours. Once you've created that, what are you going to do with it? So there you have it. Thank you very much for joining me today. I hope that's helped just a little bit to sort of explain how cling film works and what we can do with it. See what you can do with yours. Bye for now.